Come on, guys, let me see it. Ben, can I get some dance out of you? All right, good morning, good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening to some of you. Welcome to the Profit Power Hour, Season 4, hosted and presented by Profit Coach. Today, we are going to talk asset management. We are doing the asset management reality check, one of the hottest topics in property management. Going to try to dive into the weeds a little bit, get some definitions, understand if it's a good fit for everyone, what is it, how do we do it, and really looking forward to diving in with all of you. We have some esteemed guests and panelists today. We have Ben Sensenbaugh, president of the Realty Medics and one of the NARPM and property management OGs. Grateful to have you here, Ben. Thank you so much for agreeing to join. We have Lior Abramovich, co-founder and CEO of Blanket. Blanket has done a whole lot of work in elevating the asset management conversation and really driving that category. So when we decided to do a Profit Power on this, we knew we had to have Lior in the room, and we're grateful for you, Lior, to be here. And we have Sean Wolfswinkle, another OG in the property management space. He is the owner of RPM Preferred and RPM Albuquerque, has really good experience working with investors and doing asset management himself. I am your host, Brad Johnson, CEO and Profit Power host now. Obviously, you guys, if you've been around for a while, you're used to Danny or a mix of Danny and Brad. I will be taking the Profit Power Hour host seat from here on out. I'm sure Danny will drop by from time to time with a tip of his cap, but you'll primarily be getting me. I am the CEO of Profit Coach. We help property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. I have some pretty good real estate experience as well and have led a single-family rental business. Now that Danny's gone, I get to show you pictures of my beautiful family. So this is my wife, Kayla, and my 3 children. Last week at Easter at our church, had an awesome Easter weekend. I hope you did as well. That's our crew. We got 3 under 4, so we're having a good time, not sleeping a lot, but certainly having fun. All right, as a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please drop those in the Q&A box. We will do our best to answer those. Those are questions for the panelists or for myself. If you have questions for your fellow property manager, please just drop those straight into the chat. We love the chat interactions, and that's one of the best parts of the Profit Power Hour. It is a very interactive group, and please utilize that to your advantage today. Okay, so as always, we are looking for a transformation of thinking, and today on asset management, we want to help you go from operational fog to operational clarity in this way. And we, especially at Profit Coach, we are all about some data-driven decision making. So going from gut-based feelings and decision makings to data-driven. And finally, our goal, the panelist goal, is to help you reach the top of your mountain and do what we can to clarify what is asset management and do the asset management reality check and see how that might interact with what your goals are as a PM operator. Okay, the asset management reality check. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's do it. Katie, if you will go ahead and throw up the first poll. What is the primary driver of the asset management trend in property management? So in your experience, in your opinion, what would you say is the primary driver of asset management? A few options here. Owners are asking for it. Asset management sounds better than property manager. Asset manager sounds better. So there's a language evolution here that brings in additional professionalism, and that's driving the conversation. Industry influencers are encouraging it. PMs believe it will create value for owners. Or finally, PMs have seen it create value for owners. So PMs who've been doing this have seen it drive value. and that is driving the conversation forward because they're seeing it and they're explaining and showing how it's driving value. So while you are filling that out, I would love to give a little bit of face time here to our panelists. So if you would please, gentlemen, if you would introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about what you do as a property manager or as a vendor, kind of like your overall approach to property management. And I would specifically also like to know from Ben and Sean, what is the makeup of your clientele? Investors, accidental landlord, institutional. I think that'd be really helpful. So I'll start in the order in which I introduced you. Ben, take it away.
Right. Well, I run the Realty Medics. We're Central Florida. We have about 1,600 single family homes. And our investor makeup it's onesies and twosies. We have about almost 1,100 owners for those 1,600 properties. And minus myself, the largest owner we have, I think, has 12 doors. And so it's about a 1.3 ratio at the end of the day if you take out mine. But so we're tech based. We have a lot of numbers, a lot of sharing. We have owner dashboards and a lot of financials we share. We're departmental, but we're also specialists. So we don't have property managers in our organization. So yeah, it should be a good conversation though today.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really helpful. Lior, go.
So, quick background. I actually was an asset manager before Blanket. I was working for a large investment firm that was focused on build to rent, pretty much across the United States before build to rent was a thing. We called it just new construction. Today it's like it has this fancy name, build to rent. It's cool. So in my time there, I was the head of acquisitions, vice president of business development and infrastructure, oversaw pretty much our entire operation from start to finish, from land acquisition up to disposition. Handled almost $200 million worth of acquisition in my time directly with investors, and set up multiple funds as well, because we had two different models in our company back then. We had the sort of like direct ownership, buy a property, new construction property that we build, or invest in a fund through a debt vehicle or an equity vehicle. I had personally I would say, challenge and privilege to work with thousands of individual investors, mainly mom and pop investors, the clientele that our clients and our partners today work with. And the unique thing about my experience there in that company that also led to the birth of Blanket was that we had a very unique model where every client that bought a property from us, we refer them to one of our property management partners. So we had consent partners, sometimes even equity partners in certain funds. But let's say on the direct ownership side of the business, we would just refer clients to our property management partners, but we would continue managing the owner relationships for them. So like, think of it as like an investor relations arm for your property management business, where you don't even talk to your owners. Like literally, think you got an owner, you got a new property, and we are the ones sort of like handling the communications. When they have a question about buying or selling, when they have a question about what to do next, should they renovate, should they refinance, like all these strategic questions, they would turn to us. And in many cases, we got to the point that all these clients that we normally refer to were clients that were building a portfolio for like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties instead of just one, and normally not even churning. Like most of the clients that we referred are still with the same property manager for like almost 15 years now. And that is one of the things that led me, also the one that was in charge of the investor relations, to really understand the gaps and the needs between the owners and their property manager, while being the sort of like weird animal that's in between, managing the property management sort of like responsibilities when it comes to owner communications, but not managing the operations and all the heavy lifting. And that was really led to what we're doing today at Blanket. So I think that could also create some very interesting and unique stories for today's conversation.
Yeah, that's really great experience. That'll be great to draw from. Thanks, Lior. Sean, tell us a bit more about your history, your operation.
Yeah, so I have been managing my own properties for the last 25 years. Got into the property management space about 16 years ago, and we're based out of Houston, but we also have Albuquerque, New Mexico. Between the two markets, we manage about 2,300 homes. And as it pertains to this particular conversation, for the last 15 years, I've been selling turnkey rental properties and building new construction rental properties and selling those to investors. So I'd say 65% of the properties that we manage today are properties that I've sold to the clients. So we deal with individual investors, but when we're having those initial conversations with the investor, it's always about building a portfolio. So for us, an ideal client was always a client that's going to buy multiple properties and build a portfolio, not the accidental or the individual, the client that just wants one rental property. For us, it was always about building a portfolio. So our average client's like 4 to 5 properties that they own with us. And I can get into a lot of the conversations, and that's where really this asset management came into play, because we were dealing with still an individual investor, but they wanted more reports, more reporting, more details about their property, and they were more sophisticated. This was an investment for them, and so it was about the performance of the property, their long-term goals, and having more strategic conversations with that investor about their long-term outcome and what they were trying to accomplish. So we'll get more into it, but yeah, that's the makeup of what we've done the last 16 years. So
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great experience. So as you can see, we definitely have the right people on the call here to get into this. So before we do, I want to share the results for you. So primary driver, what do you believe is the primary driver of asset management? Trends of the trend in property management. There's a strong confluence here of PMs believe it will create value. So not necessarily they've seen it, they've done it, but they hear the idea, they internalize it, and they say, this is going to create value for owners, and I'm really interested. The language change coming in at number 2, not insignificant to want to create a more professional sounding and a more professional service in property management. So thank you for that. Good to know where we stand. All right. Well, let's do it. Talk about the agenda for today. 3 sections. First, and I've already gotten this question in the Q&A, what defines asset management versus property management? Where does one begin and one end? That is exactly where we are going to start. What is it in our context, and how does it differ from what we've historically referred to as property management? Number 2, does it matter to owners? Do they care? Do they want it? And does it depend on the owner type, investor versus accidental landlord, or is it for anyone who owns a property? And then finally, how do you do it? And not just how do you do it, but how do you do it well, and how can it scale in your business? Okay, and should everyone do it? Like, is there a case to be made for traditional PM or for not doing it? Okay, so let's start there. What is asset management in the SFR space? I'm going to start here with Lior because of what you have done as far as elevating the category in kind of like the play bigger parlance. You've evangelized this category, and you and some others, but honestly, you've driven a lot of this and brought this to the surface. So I'm going to let you first give your definition on it and how it differs. And then I want to get into our operators and ask them, all right, what's the differentiator, and how have you differentiated? What are you doing there? So Lior, let's start with you.
I think the most important thing to start with is like the why. Why are we even trying to, elevate the industry into an asset management industry? Why are we trying to change the conversation? And to answer that, the first thing we need to see is to look at asset classes, right? Like, look at all the asset classes we see today. Besides SFR, we have commercial, we have industrial, we have multiple asset classes in the real estate space. And each of these asset classes, the investors in those asset classes have investment managers. They have an investment manager function. They have someone that can give them the guidance, that can have a strategic conversation with them about capital allocation, about diversification, about what to do, how to do, and when to do, right? And it provides also a set of services that are taking care of portfolio optimization, of portfolio growth, all the things that a fund manager is normally doing, right? The only asset class in the real estate space that does not have an investment manager function is SFR. And this is the industry that needs it the most, because when you think about it, there is also another very unique thing about our industry. 99, or depending on which news outlet you hear, but 98 or 99% of all SFR owners are mom and pop investors. These are people that own just a very few, like a very small number of properties. Institutionals represent about 1 to 2% of the SFR space. So this means we're talking about the least sophisticated investors in the space that are owning the majority of our industry. So they don't have someone to turn to. And when you look at the stakeholders that they normally encounter in their life cycle, which is agents, lenders, insurance providers, and property managers, who is the only stakeholder in their life cycle that has a long-term commitment and has a vested interest in their financial well-being, in them growing their portfolio, in them having better performing properties? It's us, the property managers, because when our clients grow their portfolio, we make more money. When they have properties that are better performing, that are cash flow positive, that are in areas that have a higher appreciation potential, that normally can also lead to increased rents, to increase revenue per unit, right? So the better the properties are as well, the more money we're also making as property managers. So in the long-term perspective, there is a very, very aligned set of interests, right? But when we ask our owners, how do they even see us? They normally look at us as service providers, rent collectors, toilet fixers, right? We hear those different sort of like terms popping up here and there in many cases. So they look at us as service providers, but they hold us accountable as if they're investment managers, right? Like, why is my rent not collected? Or why didn't I get, that money, in the past month or whatever? Well, first of all, maybe you made a bad investment decision and you bought a property in a very difficult area where, tenant turnover is very frequent, days on market is very high. So like your major decision in the beginning impacts how the property is going to operate in many cases. That has nothing to do with the operational side of the business. And this is, I think, where we need to draw the line between what is property management and what is asset management. Property management is the operational side of the business. It's the day-to-day operation. It's the reactive and short-term preventative maintenance. It's the repairs and renovations. It's the rent collection, the expense payment, and tracking all the accounting side of your property. While asset management is overseeing performance of the property. It's portfolio enhancement, is acquisition and disposition, timing, and in general execution of that. It's preventative planning of long-term maintenance and things like that. And in general, we can put it under two main sort of like, headlines. It's portfolio growth and portfolio optimization. This is asset management versus property management. Now, we're already doing some of the things that technically fall into the category of asset management today when you think about it, right? Some of us maybe in the onboarding process talk with, owners about what their plans are, what their goals are. And then we're maybe helping them buy more properties, like Sean said. Like this is the thing we focus on. So we're already embedded into sort of like this part of the asset management umbrella. So when we're thinking about SFR asset management, it's a unique thing that has never really been defined. And this is why these talks are only happening right now, because it's a new thing. It's like, this is where the industry is going to, and this is how the industry is changing, because it's sort of like inevitable. We're already doing that. And then the question is, how do we, to your point, how do we standardize it? How do we scale it to the point that we can really reap the benefits out of us being that trusted advisor to our clients and helping them get to their long-term goal? And here's really, what is that long-term goal, right? If they're an intentional investor, they want to grow their portfolio. If they're an accidental landlord and they want to sell their property at a certain time, just helping them understand when to sell, that's already asset management. Like literally, this specific thing is asset management. So again, not going into too much detail right now, we'll save it for a few more questions, but this is pretty much it. It's part of what we're doing and a little bit extra that we need to be able to do it at scale.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Okay. So Sean, would you define the term, and would you define the way that you've practiced the term pretty similarly, or for you, does it represent sort of a separate category?
No, I think Laura did a pretty good job of explaining, but I mean, I defined it as like a strategic oversight and management of a portfolio of residential units. That was my definition for asset management. And I think as Laura said, the key difference is I think, you know, property management is in that one bucket is the day-to-day operations, the really in the weeds, where asset management is a little bit higher level and more sophisticated conversations with the investor and talking about the performance, the strategic outlook, like where are we headed with, you know, what are you trying to accomplish? You know, what's your long-term horizon on a 5-year, 10-year plan? So we're looking more strategically and then also optimizing the performance of those properties, making sure, you know, the cash flow, the debt that you have on the asset, you know, we're looking at a lot more things that maybe a traditional property management wouldn't look at. And so now I think the difficult conversation, we can get into this later, but I think the difficult conversation for a lot of people on this call, most people are in the property management space. They're just in the weeds. They're just running day to day. They're, you know, taking tenant calls, leasing, worried about other stuff. And so like, how do we as property managers make that shift? Because I think it's vital. If we're going to survive as property manager or property management companies, we're going to have to start including asset management conversations into our space. Because or else you're going to be run out of business. I think the companies that are able to do it and have these conversations with their clients are the ones that are going to attract more business down the road. So yes, I think it's vital that we start having these conversations and we start headed this direction. And I can get into a little bit about the details of like how we try to do that within our own businesses, but it's something that you're going to have to start doing as a property manager to compete in this market space. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Ben, what would you add to that as far as the definition goes, and just getting clear on terms before we jump into how you did it and how other people maybe ought to do it?
Yeah, I think saying that is only asset management and difference from property management, I think there is definitely some blurred lines. I mean, you know, I think it sounds sexy, and I think asset management is a great idea. And there's a lot of good things, and we can still stay ahead as property managers. But if you have a bad performing property, it's really hard to convince. Well, for ours, it can be hard to say this is not a property we want to manage, and you should sell it. And you know, and we still have goals. We're still being very strategic. We still want them to grow, but it's hard to sometimes transition through some of those difficult situations, I guess. So, you know, by providing good data and looking at how a certain property is performing, what we found is a lot of times, you know, we say that we're going to help asset manage this property, that those owners are really not sure what to do with all of that data as well. You know, like, hey, you got great cash return. They're like, or cash on cash the last 12 months. And then they're like, well, you know, I want to put it somewhere else. And then we have that conversation. It does turn into assets. So there is some conversations we're having, but I don't think it's a full on like a commercial, which has not as much variability, I don't think, as single family or some of these other products, I guess we have. The single family home has so many different variables by so many different types of owners that it can really play a lot of different ways, and the different holds and different types of maintenance you do, different types of tenants you put in. There's a lot. It's really hard to categorize all this. So didn't really define that very well, but asset management, it's still a little blurry on my side exactly what that means.
Yeah, Brett, if I may just jump
go
in
ahead.
to strengthen Ben's point. One of the biggest things or challenges I would say that we are faced with right now in trying to define this is the basic nature of the investment vehicle. In SFR, we're talking about direct ownership, full ownership. In every other asset class, we're talking about fractional ownership. It's a typical fund with the GP/LP structure. It's a different set of expectations. It's a different set of a relationship. It's completely different. So like the asset type, the investment vehicle, the structure in terms of the legal structure, the relationship as well, is completely different in each one of those other asset classes because of how the ownership is structured. Here, we're really, I'm not trying to sound too, like cliche or whatever, but we're really creating something new here. Because normally asset management is immediately when people think about it, right? It's like, oh, asset manager is probably like fund, manager type of stuff, Wall Street, GPLP structure, complex, investment vehicles. Here we have it in a much more simpler way, but it has to be defined. And this is one of the things that is just forming up right now with the actual, practices and capabilities and processes that a lot of folks that are already doing some of that are doing. So this is where it really gets tricky and why it's difficult to define it, because it is something completely new. We are forming this category, which is asset management in SFR.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that checks out to me. That makes a lot of sense. Rick Ellis just asked a question that I think is really interesting. That I actually just spun up a quick poll. Katie, you can go ahead and put that up. He said, how would you introduce this mindset to owners? What tools are available, which is kind of a separate question. What tools are available to present long-term goals for current assets under management? I want to ask the question, in your onboarding process, your owner onboarding process or your unit onboarding process, do you ask the question, what are your goals / what are the financial outcomes you're looking for with this property in that process? Is that onboarding process for you mostly transactional? Here's what we do, here's what you need to do. Or does it start with okay, thanks for the house. Thanks for signing your PMA. What do you want to do? Where do you want this to go? Do you have a return you're looking for? Is this a long-term? Is this a short-term hold, etc.? So I'll give just another few seconds to put that up. And the reason I asked that question is because I would say, how do you introduce that mindset to owners? Well, if you start the relationship with, I'm here not just to fix your toilet, as important as that is, but I'm here to help you on your goals, whatever they might be. I think asking that question at the beginning is helpful. Sean, Ben, is that part of your process?
Yes, I mean, we on the front end of it, we're doing, so our BDMs are having those conversations. We try to gear it kind of around the 4 pillars of real estate. So cash flow, amortization, appreciation, depreciation. So they're having those conversations with the client on the front end. We're pod based for majority of the way we're structured. There's some department things that are separate outside of the pod, but for the most part, we're pods. So within a pod, there is a CSR that is having a monthly call with each of our owners to discuss again those same conversations. So they're going over the performance of their asset. They're going over the general questions that any PM would have, but also taking it a step further and talking about, are we reaching their goals? Are they on track of where they wanted based upon that initial onboarding call? So we're having those conversations on a monthly basis with that client as well. And that's how we've been able to satisfy or add that asset management piece to and adding value. Because that was one of the conversations or questions was like, hey, is this adding value, or do people feel like they in the PM space need to do this to add value? And so this is the one way that we're doing it, and adding that asset management is with the CSRs. And it's difficult. It's because you're gonna have to do a lot of training on the front end with these CSRs to be able to have those conversations. You're going to do some education on their side to be able to have those sophisticated conversations with the clients. We've utilized, I think Merlin posted in the chat channel, RPM developed the Wealth Optimizer. It's a software tool that allows us to import all their expenses, income and expenses from AppFolio into the software. And then it allows the client, and in our case, the CSR, to run a report every month on the performance of their portfolio and each individual property. So we can look at the owner can put in all their mortgage information, can put in what they want to use as a depreciation rate and a amortization rate. It does also pull data historically from that. So let's just say it'll look at a particular area or subdivision and look at the historical data as far as appreciation rates in those particular areas. But if the owner thinks that maybe it's going to grow quicker or there's going to be some more appreciation, they can alter those numbers and play with it. But we can now have an intelligent conversation and look at the reporting of, okay, this is what your property is going to look like in 5 years. This is what kind of returns you're going to get, and have those conversations, and looking at, again, the 4 pillars. So cash flow, amortization, appreciation, depreciation, and looking at the investment as a whole, not just, is my property occupied, what's my
Right,
rent,
right.
a much more sophisticated conversation with the client. So
For sure. Okay. I'm going to throw these results up here. Do you include the question, what are your goals? Do you have that initial conversation? 68% said yes, 32% said no. So looks like the majority of people are starting the relationship with some expectation setting, some goal setting, some good understanding. Ben, what about for you guys? What does it look like initially with that conversation?
Yeah, it's actually really close to what Sean just said. So we're trying to find out, is this a sophisticated investor, or is it one or two properties, accidental landlord? We try to understand what's their short-term, long-term goals. A lot of our owners, it's covering a certain amount above their mortgages and things like that, right? And as long as we understand that, like, it's not a sophisticated investor, and like rental price means more than vacancy time. We have a few of those where they would rather wait out to get the $50 versus the house sits vacant for an extra 30 days or something like that, because they're going after a DSCR loan or something like that. So we want to make sure we understand that up front. And then we built, which is very similar to what Wealth Optimizer, and also I saw Stessa, we built something similar to that has, all of our mortgage and our taxes, insurance, and then our current values. And then it'll also tell out, how much equity, which returns, all of the different appreciation rates and all the different numbers that we review with them on a quarterly basis. And that's pulled from Appfolio every single month. We've been doing that for about 5 years. So we try to have
So
those.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
I would say we're trying to have these really intelligent conversations.
Yeah. Did you say quarterly is when you review performance with your owners?
They have a portal, so they can log in at any time.
Okay.
And they can pull up that. We also have, how many applicants did you have? How many lease showings did you have? What are the work orders? What are all your property inspections? We have all this in a portal.
Okay.
And we can interact and chat with them through that portal as well. But so, yeah, I forgot
Okay, cool.
where I was going with
No,
that. But yeah, we definitely talk to them. I guess very few will be on that. Most of all of them are going to say cash flow is everything. And we're just looking on how much advice that they need is what we're trying to really grasp. We kind of put them in two categories of, okay, this guy knows pretty close what he's doing, he or she. And this one, we're going to have to coach, and we spend a lot more hand-holding time with them. But at the end of the day, we're still going to treat them basically the same. Is, hey, our market data says this is what we're going to start the rent off with. This is the type of, these are the things you have to fix. These are minimum standards. And then when those maintenance items come up longer term, do we need to patch this roof because you are going to sell it, or do we need to put a new roof because you're going to hold it? Those are some of the capital expenditures that we'll talk about over time.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. In very brief, Lior, I know you guys have a similar tool. Quick flyover on the tool that you've built at Blanket.
Yeah, so specifically here, again, one of the features that we have is the investor dashboard. So this is no manual data entry type of tool that shows the owner and you the actual performance of the property. So it integrates with the property management software, pulls, again, same thing, all the income and expenses, cleans out all the irrelevant GL accounts that shouldn't be shown to the owner. We pull data from title companies, public county records, national data providers. So we pull in their mortgage payments, their actual interest rates, their, so like LTV, all of their mortgage information. We pull in their purchase details. We pull their estimated insurance. We pull their HOA, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So that way the owner doesn't have to fill out anything. Both you don't have to fill out anything. And the idea is, because that's like the biggest lift when you would think about asset management, is understanding what's happening, like what's the actual performance, right? Because if I would love also to ask the audience here and all the folks listening, Like, who here knows if their clients are cash flow positive or negative? Because that is the underlying and the most important question we need to ask ourselves. Because if we don't know how our clients' properties are really doing, how can we really be efficient in solving a problem or a complaint that they have? So let's say an owner calls me complaining about, why do I have to spend another $3,000 to fix this water heater or whatever, right? So like, if he's calling all agitated and pissed off and I don't know if he's actually cash flow positive or negative, I might miss out on the proper way to handle this conversation. Because let's say he's cash flow positive and he's just pissed off about this whole thing. So I can tell him, let's call him John for the sake. Like, hey John, yeah, I know it's frustrating, but look at how much your property appreciated in value in the last couple of years. Like, putting everything into perspective and then showing him that yes, this $3,000 thing is not that big of an issue. But if I know he's actually cash flow negative because of his mortgage payments, because of other things, maybe the property's really old and there's a lot of expenses all the time, right? So maybe I shouldn't focus on fixing this water heater problem and instead speak with him about, hey man, this property is just not doing good. Let's think about 1031 exchanging it. Let's sell it, switch it with a better performing property with maybe some better cash flow, better appreciation potential. And then we understand that sometimes when we're blind and we're not seeing what's actually happening, we might think that we're solving the problem when we're actually solving the symptom. And this is the biggest thing. So that's what we're trying to do, is just give you the data, both to your client and both for you to be able, number one, to handle these conversations that are from a reactive standpoint, but also from a very proactive standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really helpful. Okay. We are going to move on. I'm going to skip this poll because we kind of addressed it. So let's get into this. Let's get into this. Does asset management matter to owners? I want to start here with Ben. Ben, you've done a lot of different things in this space over the years. You're somebody who's pretty well known for trying new things, staying on the edge. I can think of 4 or 5 different things that you've basically created at your company. I'm sure there are more. So you've been doing this for a while. Are you finding that this matters to owners? And I'm very interested in this. Is there a segmentation on how much this matters to owners based on the type of owner that you're working with?
Sure. So when I developed this, 4 or 5 years ago, I still am very excited about it. Let me just say it's the best information to provide to our clients. It provides everything, it paints the picture, and I always wanted to be able to predict, hey, this house is trending up or this house is trending down based on maintenance costs and the whole thing to try to get this perfect X. So with that in mind, that's why we put a lot of time in developing this. But over time, when you're showing it to an owner who has 1 or 2 houses, they don't need to look at it every month because they're not going to, just because it's down 1 month and they have to put in, I don't mean to pick on Leo, but they put in the water heater. They're not going to sell it just because of that, but they're in a bad spot now that they had to put a, $1,500 one. So the answer is we've really struggled with getting our owners to actually use the product that's free to them and to make quality decisions. But it has helped us in the conversation of, hey, you do have a water heater and let's look at your cash on cash return. It's not as bad as you think it is. Or look at your appreciation here. This is help us educate and help us show. But these smaller guys, they're emotional about these properties and they really don't care. I mean, they're not going to necessarily go sell it, but they're just not happy. And I wish we could 1031 it in our current market and go find them a better property. In our current market at the moment, that's not there. It was, of course, probably for everyone, a year and a half ago and sooner. And we were doing that. We were selling brand new construction homes, all the things, say, this is way better, get out of this. So we're kind of in that weird spot where we're like, yes, you have to do it. This is really cool. You should use this data, but we probably have 15 to 20% of our owners are actually logging in every quarter, and we'll have to use this as more of a teaching tool and doing, hey, and marketing the heck out of it. But it's been a long time, so I think they're almost tired of hearing about it. But the ones who do use it are the are the larger ones or the people who are just financially sound. They really do care and they make smart decisions off of it. So
Before we have the others jump in, I want to throw this poll up here too. I'd love to get your take, your opinion. How much does property financial performance represent what your owners care about versus how well the property is being taken care of? So I know that's a bit of a false dichotomy. I get it, but pitting asset for the moment, pitting asset management against property management in terms of what do your owners care about the most? Like what's the makeup of financial performance versus traditional is keep my house maintained, keep everything fine. I don't want to talk to you about my goals or my assets. So I'm going to let that run while we get back to it. A couple just data points here, just interesting to add data to add to the context. This was from the PM Trends report put out by Peter Lohman, Jordan Muela of Lead Simple on, okay, what matters the most when I'm considering hiring a property manager? Level of experience, reputation, professionalism as a whole matters a lot. Now, I checked with Peter, and much to Lior's chagrin here, one of the answers that you could select was not financial or property financial performance. And I bet in a future study, it probably will be. So they didn't really give them the opportunity to say it's property performance, but I think you can read between the lines and see a good bit of some things that do matter. And then, okay, once you have the PM, once you're operating with the PM, what do you commonly evaluate them on the most? PM professionalism, upfront, speed of communication, tenant satisfaction. Some interesting data here that I think correlates to a higher degree of professionalism in the industry. So, Sean, for you, backing up here, what have you found as far as how much does this resonate with owners, and does it depend on the type of owner? And by the way, I'll throw the poll results up first, which is okay, pretty much in the middle. Half to 2/3. Let's summarize it that way. Half to 2/3 of my owners care about property financial performance over against PM. So a big chunk. Is that true for you guys, or do you have a different type of clientele?
Yeah, so I think Ben did a pretty good job of explaining it, and we're very similar in that we used to try to touch base and have a call and go over this almost monthly with every owner in our portfolio, which was always difficult, but we found that a big percentage of them could care less, and so they were more concerned with just the small expenses that they were incurring, or the as Ben mentioned, those were the ones that are emotionally tied to the properties. Maybe they lived in it at one point, and so they're just more concerned about them keeping up the property. I would say a lot of the clientele that we've sold property to over the years, the ones that took this as a diversification of their assets and their investments, and got into SFR as a vehicle for their retirement and all that. Those ones are the ones that want to have a more detailed conversation. So it's probably 60% care about it in our portfolio. And those are the ones we're just focused on and having the conversations and scheduling the calls with them monthly. And sometimes it's just to go over certain questions, and sometimes it's going into a more detailed report using the Wealth Optimizer and a detailed conversation and more strategy. And every once in a while, some of our larger ones, even as owners, Joni and I will jump on the phone and have a more strategy call with them. We're trying to also implement doing more from Joni and I's perspective in our experience, and doing more webinars with our clients to, again, add to that little bit higher level than just the CSR. It's not as interactive or one-on-one, but it's at least we're talking about more market trends and what we're seeing and some of the strategy that we're implementing individually as investors. But I think, yeah, like Ben mentioned, I think there's still a large percentage that they're not as concerned with and it's usually the smaller ones. It's the people that have one or two doors. The larger ones, I would say 4 to 5 or more, are the ones that you're having those detailed conversations with.
Yeah, that's really good. Lior, I'm curious to get your take on this. First, what do you find as you're talking to your clients? I'm saying specifically more clients rather than prospects, customers who are actually doing this and experimenting. What's their feedback? And then the second part of that is, do you think we should we encourage property management companies and property managers to try to make the people who don't care? Or is this an exercise of, if you care, I want to be excellent at this and help you?
Big no, big no.
Big no.
Yeah, and I'll explain why. And I think this is also a very important understanding of what is asset management and property management. Um, what does an asset manager do, right? They talk with their client, they understand their problems or their needs, and they go and act upon those problems or needs. That's it. Three things, three very simple things that all of them, when it comes to, again, about execution of solving problems or execution of, fulfilling needs, they are all in property management, at least. They're all surrounding the property performance. That could be operational, or that could be like actual, portfolio optimization. Like if we're acting as an asset manager for our clients in SFR, we're probably doing something regarding their property performance. Now, Sean mentioned they have a customer success manager, right, Sean? If I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So in property management, when you think about it, asset management is customer success. And we don't also have, normally in most parts of our industry, a customer success function as well. It's sort of like, in many cases, it's spread between responsibilities of our property manager, and maybe other staff members. But like in many cases, we don't have also that set and standardized function of customer success. But in property management, customer success is asset management. Because what does the customer success manager does in every other industry as well? They speak to the client, they ask what their problems and needs are, and they go and act upon them. Same as an asset manager is doing about his portfolio. So in our industry, that's customer success. Now, to your question, we don't need to change how our clients are thinking. We can help them be more aware. We can help them see that we're more transparent. But when you think about it, you can't change someone's perspective in a short period of time. You just cannot. So like if we have accidental landlords, we need to cater to their needs. We need to, and that's what what we are also doing as a company. We're tailoring our approach to the needs of our clients, to what their goals are. We're not providing the same type of service, or let's say trainings even, to every client. We're adapting and tailoring it because each one has specific needs. So accidental landlords will have specific needs and expectations. We don't need to force them to understand what's cash on cash return, what's IRR, what's ROI.
Right.
They don't have an interest in doing that. So we shouldn't be wasting our time on that. And the intentional investors also, they break down into two categories: the intentional investors that are more sophisticated and have maybe several dozens of doors, and the intentional investors that maybe just have one door or two doors. They're sort of like in between. Each one requires a different approach. Now, that doesn't mean that it's more complex for us. It just means we need to think differently about how we approach every one of our clients and give them what they need, understand their goals,
Yeah.
understand their problems, and tailor to that. And that is how you really win clients for life. And just to add one more, one little thing here, if we do ask that question of what are your goals, the question that you asked, this is where we set that framework for what we need to do with this specific client. Because if we do it at the beginning, we already understand they're accidental, they're intentional, they want to grow, they want to stay, they want to sell. And based on that, we can set the expectation. So just to give some numbers and data, we see across tens of thousands of owners in our platform that some property management companies have 70% activation rate of their clients, meaning 70% of the clients activated their account and are using their investor dashboard. And we have some clients that have just 20 or 30% of their clients. Normally, what we see the correlation is the breakdown of how many intentional investors are making up of the clientele versus how many accidental landlords are there, and the age of the clients as well. because some folks don't even open our emails. Folks that are older don't know how to use tag. They prefer maybe to get, like actual physical papers, when they want to see their statements. Like that's also one thing that impacts that, but it really changes in how you operate.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, that's great data. So, big no on forcing people into a place that they haven't necessarily self-identified where they want to be, but keeping in front of them their property performance and at least letting them know maybe will provide some degree of interest down the line in, oh, I'd like to take this a little more seriously. So, that's really good. Okay, we are going to move on to our third and final section here. First, so when it comes to PM professionalism and experience, perception, is asset management a real differentiator? I think we're finding that for some clients and for some portfolios, it really is, and maybe for others, it's not. What I'd like to do is ask you this question: if you would like some help figuring out if asset management is right for you. So I'd like to offer you the opportunity to speak with me, if that's of interest to you, to help you understand, from a financial perspective, understanding your current financial performance. Where do you stand? Where are things within your business and where are your big opportunities? Define where you want your financial performance to be in the next 3 years, and answer this question that I think a lot, if not most PMs are asking right now. Should I do asset management? How should I do asset management? What is that going to look like as far as a revenue driver based on the rest of my opportunities, by clarifying first your financial priorities, kind of taking the same approach that you do with an owner, which is what are your goals? What do you want? What are you looking for? That can really help you clarify this question. So if that's of interest to you, select yes in the poll and we will send you a request to meet with me, or you can just go do that directly. Point your camera right at that QR code, go straight to my HubSpot calendar, and I'd love the opportunity to meet with you and discuss that a little bit further. Okay, thank you for that, for for hearing me out there and for responding to the poll. Got a lot of good responses there. So, how to do asset management well? How to scale it in your business? We've talked a little bit about the CSR method, the using dashboards, etc. So I'm sure there's more detail there. I think where I'd like to go, because somebody asked this question, what would be the asset manager set of skills? And I think they meant to say abilities. So when you're thinking about asset management, you guys have used CSRs and sort of departmental models. What are some of the ways, Leo, I'll start with you on this, just because you have a kind of a wide angle lens as to how do property managers do this. Is it usually portfolio model? I become an expert on your property and on your portfolio, and I go that route, or is it usually we have a department that handles this? And for everyone who's interacting with an owner at an asset management level, what do they need to know? Where do they need to be educated? Do they need to have a CPA, etc.?
Yeah, I can say that we saw success with different types of models in terms of how the company set up. We've seen success with folks that don't have a dedicated, customer success manager, or someone who's doing the owner calls. So we pretty much seen it across the board. I would say one thing that is common to all the folks that really adopted and achieved success with our platform, at least from the data that we see, is folks who really set ownership. Who is in charge of doing this, right? So it can be a shared responsibility between the property managers. It can be a shared responsibility between BDMs, because our platform allows a lot of other things that you can do that is part of like this large asset management umbrella. But I would say the best and most scalable, I would say, setup that we've seen in how people use our platform is, number one, is perfect their onboarding process, which again, it's not related to our platform. It's just really making sure your onboarding process is set for success, collecting the relevant information to understand what the client needs. Then having the data at your fingertips, and this is where our platform comes in. You don't need to go and create spreadsheets, create pro formas, and gather all the data from different sources. or wait for the owner to fill it out, which is one of the options. We always say in many presentations that I give, you don't have to use Blanket to do this. This is super important. You don't have to be a Blanket client to become an asset manager. We just help save some of that time. That's one of the main things that we're helping on that investor dashboard side. But having the data at your fingertips allows you to, number one, share that with the owner for them to always see that and, you know, really become more, I would say, type of a client for life, you know, a profile of a client instead of someone who might churn at every moment, but also having the data on your end. So our platform surfaces that. Once you have set the onboarding and you have all the data at your fingertips, that's when you can start taking actions. So those are the two things that have to be set at first, right? Perfect the onboarding, get the data. After you get the data, you come to step number 2, which is driving insights or creating your self-recommendations on what you should do for every client, right? And this could be on a reactive or on a proactive strategy. So you can, for example, have the data at your fingertips, and when an owner calls, you have that in front of you and you can make the right, you know, remarks. Or you can do it proactively by having these monthly, quarterly, biannual, or annual calls. So our platform also helps with that part as well, which is to, number one, tell you what to do. And this is one of the biggest gaps that we've seen in the beginning, and we learned from that as well. We thought that if we'll just provide the data, everybody will know what to do. Didn't happen, right? So this is why we also used the power of AI that we worked for almost 2 years on some of these features that really tell you what to do with every owner, what you need to do to retain them, what you need to do to help them, you know, buy another property, sell that property, or anything that's related as part of the asset management decision making, right? And once you have that, so like the what to do, then you just execute. And here you can decide how to execute that. That could be, again, those owner calls. That could be an annual owner letter that you're sending to each one of your clients that has, you know, certain parts that are copy paste for every owner, but just maybe one part that is personalized for them, right? And just by doing these two things, the periodical meetings with them, annually, biannually, whatever you decide, and an annual owner letter, that's how you can really be set up for success to do asset management well. So just to summarize, perfect onboarding, get the data at your fingertips. That's step number 1. Step number 2, generate the insights or the recommendations for yourself on what to do and how to act to, you know, solve the certain situation. And number 4, execute. And that could be through these periodical calls, that could be through annual owner letters, or any other setup that you might think. So that is how you can really set this up. And again, not necessarily using any tech platforms. You can do it with spreadsheets or whatever you decide to do.
Okay. No, that's a really, really helpful framework. Thank you. Sean, your CSRs, what do you do to train them? What do they need to be proficient at? What's the degree of expertise they need to be able to have these conversations with owners? I think that's a lot of people's big fear here is education.
So yeah, it's definitely. So you're gonna number one, it's an investment, and so I think that's where I think people struggle with it is that it's not the immediate return, and that's why you don't see a lot of it in our space because it's not like they're doing leases and generating income right away. This is an investment, and shout out to Merlin Hoff on the chat channel with RPM Express. But he mentioned earlier in the chats that it creates a stickier client, and I think that's how we look at it is that this investment that we're making in CSRs in their training, education, and just having a CSR is creating a stickier client for us that's going to stick around and reduce our churn. But as far as to answer your question, number one is we have a training through RPM that they have to go through, which talks about, again, the 4 pillars of real estate. So like cash flow, amortization, depreciation. And so they get trained on that up front. So it's almost like a 4-week course that they go through on training. There's a couple books that, you know, just like the basics. So like what every real estate investor needs to know about cash flow and 36 other key financial. It's a book you can get on Amazon, but we make them read that. So up front, we're educating them and showing them, and then we're going through initially either a pod leader or one of our COO or our general manager will meet with them on the upfront on the training, and they'll be on their first couple months of calls with them, and just so they can see it and what they're going over, some of the, and then as far as like that, it's mainly following the outline of the wealth optimizer as far as the reports and just going over those reports with them. So not necessarily do they need to know everything, they just need to know how to get the reports and get the data that they need to show the owner, to have that conversation with them. But yeah, just in general, what to summarize, I think Lior did a really good job of, you need a dedicated person. We personally believe in taking a proactive approach to this. And then you're going to need some software to collect the data and present the data to an owner in a way that they understand. They're used to, most of them have some kind of stock market report that they're used to getting. So some way that to present, with graphs and stuff like that to show them their cash flow and their performance and what their properties are doing. So some kind of software tool you're going to need in order to accomplish this. So hopefully that I answered everything that you needed.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Ben, I'll wrap up with you. As far as education proficiency goes, what are you looking for? How are you training your people on how to do this really well?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone in our company has a specialist role of some kind. So, and of course, certain ones can talk at a higher level than maybe others. But at the end of the day, we do have onboarding is one of the most important, where we set the groundwork. We teach them how this process is gonna go, or how our relationship's gonna go, and also understand how they want to be communicated and talk to, the goals and all that. So, but once it gets past that, as long as we eliminate every mistake possible from a property manager's side of things, we answer every phone call, return every email very quickly. We lease the house with like, it's our only property to lease. Maintenance is super cheap, get it done super fast. And, we're always ahead of the game telling the owners that this is our issue, or this is what we're fixing, instead of them asking what the issues are. If we can have 0 incoming questions, then we have optimized the business. And that's always been my goal, is to have this perfectly run property management with like 0 mistakes. And if you can do that, all these numbers and things are going to reflect. And we can call it property management, call it asset management, but at the end of the day, that's exactly what it's going to end up being. And for training wise, yeah, I didn't answer your question. That's just my main point. But
yeah,
everyone has a piece of that, and no one person has, hey, you're my asset manager. We have a person for each role. And if it is a person with 10 properties, then we're going to make sure we have the right person on the phone to discuss that they want to leave or something. We're going to understand why they are going to leave, and we're going to go fix that in the company. And then we're going to go back to processing and learn from that confrontation, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. Okay, well, we're at time here, a little bit over, so we will wrap it up on that note. Thank you guys. Thank you to our panelists so much for coming, dropping some knowledge, giving some really good insight into how to do this, how to do it well, and more. So thank you guys. Just so you know, our next Profit Power Hour is Wednesday, May 28th at noon Central Time. So we will see you then and there. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.